Hi everyone, welcome to CIS 351. This video will be that traditional first day lecture where I tell you a bit about the course, how it's structured, some of the rules, and other things you need to know to be successful. Of course, the most important thing to know about the course this semester is that it'll be a staggered hybrid course. That means content will primarily be delivered through videos in the textbook, and then we'll meet once a week to review and practice that material. Yes, that means you'll actually have to read part of the textbook. I also plan to use this time for exams and quizzes. And let me quickly mention that I'm thinking about giving several smaller exams rather than 2 or 3 big high-stakes exams this semester. This once weekly meeting is required. I want to see each of your smiling faces at least once a week. Or, well, at least the part of your smiling face that isn't covered by a mask. And that's because a personal connection is a really important part of how most of us teach at Grand Valley. I really got an appreciation for this past summer because I taught 163 fully online and there was just something missing. Part of that was it was just weird to have taught a complete class to students that I might not now recognize if I ran into them on the sidewalk. But in hindsight, I think the bigger and more important challenge was that I wasn't able to watch and react to the students' body language as I was lecturing. When I'm teaching normally in a classroom, I can tell who's bored or lost or frustrated, and I can adjust accordingly. That doesn't work so well when I'm just talking to a microphone in my basement. So in order for me to provide the quality of teaching that Grand Valley students expect, I think there needs to be some level of personal interaction, like these once-a-week meetings. Provided we can still do that safely, of course. Now, having said that, it's also important that you find this in-person time helpful as well, not just me. So if you find that it isn't really useful, please send me an email or stop me after class and offer some suggestions of what we could do different. The staggered hybrid is something new for me, and I'm very willing to try some different things throughout the semester to figure out what works well for everybody. Labs will be online and synchronous. That means you need to be sitting at your computer working on the lab during the official lab time. And the reason that you have to do the lab during lab time is that these labs aren't just like extra homework assignments. They're designed to help you discover the ideas of the class on your own without having all the details spelled out beforehand in lecture. Most students need a fair amount of help completing the labs, and it's really inefficient to try to do this type of discovery learning on your own, because every time you get stuck, you would have to stop and compose an email and wait for me to respond to the email, and it would just take twice as long to get it done. In contrast, if you're working synchronously, you can just raise your virtual hand and ask a question. We can have a conversation and you can keep moving, and it will let you get the same amount of work done in much less time. It's also more efficient because we tend to see the same questions across groups. And so when I see a common misconception or a common problem during a lab, I can break in and answer that or clarify that to the whole class at once. And then you all don't have to individually take time to ask those questions or send those emails. The official textbook for the class will be the second edition of the Harris & Harris Digital Design and Computer Architecture book. However, I suggest you find a used copy of the first edition. The two have nearly identical content. I can't even remember what the differences between the two are. I think there might be a couple of diagrams that have been corrected or something like that. If there's additional content, I can't even remember what it is. But for all that similarity, the first edition is much cheaper, like under $15 as compared to $75 or more. And this book is really worth buying. I know that might be a little hard to believe. As an undergrad, I spent a lot of money on a lot of CS textbooks that were little more than paperweights, but this book is really well written. You can actually read it and learn stuff from it. In fact, some of the book content won't be included in the videos. The authors did such a good job that I don't think I could do better in the video, so I'll just rely on the already prepared book. Let me also mention that this book contains a lot of optional material. It's designed so that it could also be used in a computer engineering or electrical engineering class. So there are quite a few sections that sort of dip down below the typical computer science level, and they'll talk about the physical properties of the chips and so on. And so those sections certainly aren't required. You're not going to be tested on that. However, it may be worth your time to read through those sections so that your knowledge is expanded out of computer science and overlaps with computer engineering and electrical engineering a little bit. It's always helpful to be able to speak with people outside your field, and this is an opportunity to expand that area of common ground. You're not going to have to work with double E's or CEs every day, but certainly if you're the person who can have those conversations, it'll help make you stand out in whatever job you're doing. All right, so let's talk a little bit about where you find the important information for the class. And so your starting point for just about anything you're looking for will be the course webpage. This webpage here, here's the URL. I'll make sure I've emailed that to everybody. And here you'll find all the typical stuff you'd expect to find: contact information, office hours, a link to the syllabus. Do take time to read through the syllabus, honesty policy, stuff like that. The most important things you'll be looking for here are typically the list of assignments and the list of labs. And perhaps even more important than that is this link in the upper left here to the timeline. The timeline shows the list of topics we'll be talking about each week, and then we'll give either the textbook reading or links to the videos that cover that material. This is where you come to find out what you need to read or watch before coming to class every week. I also have over here links to the homeworks and labs so you can see how that ties in on a more like calendar view, or how it ties in with the videos and the readings. If we do any online lectures and I do a screencast in Blackboard, that will be here under the notes section, or if I have any hand typed notes to supplement the videos, the links will go there as well. I'm going to use a website called Piazza as the course discussion board. This will be where I post announcements to the entire class, and this will be a place for you to ask the types of questions you would ask in class. So if you're about to send an email asking for a clarification on something in the video or a clarification on an assignment or a test, please post that to Piazza instead of sending me the email directly. The benefit of that is, well, one, you're probably not the only one who has that same question, so other students can see that answer before they even have to send their own email. And two, you're able to answer each other's questions. So when you have a question at 12:30 in the morning and I'm been long asleep, then hopefully somebody else in the class will see that and get back to you faster than I can. And of course, like I said, this is for the types of questions you would ask in class. If you have a private question, like a question about grades or something like that, that you can still email to me. It's no secret that I'm not a big fan of Blackboard. I think they've tried to do too many features so that most of those features aren't done very well. So I'm only going to use Blackboard for grades because I want you to be able to easily and quickly log in and see where you stand in the class, or be able to detect any mistakes I may have made putting grades in. And I also use the Collaborate Ultra tool that's typically used for online lectures and whatnot. That's what I'll be using for the labs and online office hours, or if we need to schedule an individual appointment, Collaborate Ultra is a good place to log in and meet virtually there. And so although I'm not impressed with Blackboard as a whole, this is the major exception. I think they did really well with this one feature, and we will certainly use it a lot during the semester. Let me say a few things about my teaching style. So the first thing I want you to know is I like mouthy students. Now, I don't mean rude students. What I really mean is I like to know what's going well and what isn't. Don't hesitate to tell me if there's an aspect of class that doesn't work for you. And that's especially important this semester as we're doing some things differently than we've done in the past. I'm going to need to make some adjustments to get things just right. And the only way I can do that is if the class as a whole isn't afraid to say, hey, this isn't quite right, we need to make some changes here. And so I do want to hear what you don't like about the course. Now, we may agree to disagree, and that's okay. Some things I'll be able to fix, some things I won't be able to fix, but I'll do a better job teaching if I know where I'm serving you well and where there might be a disconnect. The challenge is, of course, with 75 or more students, what works for you may not work for somebody else, but the more information I have, the better of a job I can do. With that in mind, you should also know that I like to mess around in class a bit. I try not to be too serious when I'm up in front of the classroom, and that's for a few reasons. One is this class is hard work. My job at times is hard work, and we all need to have some fun along the way. But more importantly, I want you all to be comfortable speaking up in class. So the first part of that is what I just said. I want you to be comfortable saying, hey, this isn't working for me. I don't like this. This assignment's too hard. Anything of that nature. If you're not comfortable giving negative feedback, then I can't do a better job or I can't improve the class as we go along. The other part of that is I want you all to be comfortable raising your hand and offering answers that may or may not be correct. This seems a little counterintuitive, but I've found, at least for me, that I learn best by thinking about wrong answers as well as right answers. I sometimes learn more by seeing why an almost answer is wrong than I do by just seeing the whole correct answer played out start to finish. And so in order to do that and to take advantage of that, you need some wrong answers to think about. And when I try to come up with a wrong answer to think about in class, it comes across as artificial and contrived because, of course, I already know the right answer. But when a student offers an answer that's wrong, and by wrong is usually about 90% correct with one little piece in it. When a student offers one of those answers, being able to talk about that little piece that's not quite right is often more insightful than whatever I've strictly prepared out of the notes in the textbook and so on. But the only way to get those wrong answers to talk about is for students to be comfortable being wrong. And I've found that having a less serious atmosphere in class goes a long way to helping that. So if I'm up front and it doesn't seem like I'm taking the course completely seriously, then that's somewhat intentional. That's somewhat my personality. And of course, the caveat is if parts of that don't work for you, see the first bullet point here and feel free to tell me that. All right, office hours. So office hours are those times that I make a point of being in my office, or this semester that might mean being available online. And so when it's office hours, you can be confident that if you're somewhere near Mackinac Hall, you can walk to my office and you should be able to find me there. And you should be allowed to be a little bit irritated if you don't find me there. But I try to be available from 9 to 4 during the work week. Whenever I'm not in class or a meeting or something like that, right? If I can be available to students, I want to be available to students. So don't just wait for that official office hours on the calendar to come visit. If you've got a question and you're nearby, walk by my office. Chances are I'll be there if I don't have something else scheduled. Now, when you walk by my office, I try to use that open door metric. I don't know if you've heard that before, but if the door is wide open, it means come in and talk about whatever's on your mind, whether it's a problem in class or you just want to chat, right? If the door is only open a few inches, then you probably want to limit your conversation to classroom topics. And if the door is closed or just barely cracked, then you probably only want to come in if you actually have an urgent problem, something that it's really important to solve right now. Now, how this open door thing translates to virtual office hours, I haven't figured out yet. So if you have any ideas, by all means, let me know. And speaking of that, as I mentioned earlier, if we are having online office hours, then I will be in the Collaborate Ultra course room. And a few last minor details. As I mentioned earlier, I'm considering doing several smaller exams instead of the more traditional 2 or 3 big high-stakes exam. We'll talk about that in class as we get a little bit closer. The deadlines for labs are harder than they are for most assignments. If the deadline for lab is Monday morning, it really needs to be done Monday morning. And that's to avoid this thing that I call the death spiral. What I've seen in the past is students will work on the lab and not quite get it done, and then they won't think about it again for a whole other week. So they come back to lab the next week, and while we're starting lab 3, they're finishing lab 2. And so they're that much more behind at the end of lab 3, and they don't think about it for a whole other week. And each week they come in and they've got more and more and more of the last week's lab to finish before they start the new lab. And then you're not in sync. I talked earlier about why it was important for the whole class to be working on this together. And what that ends up doing is it makes the labs take much longer than they need to take. And you already, as a student, don't have enough hours in the day. So I'm going to go with that hard deadline on lab to help keep labs in sync so that you can use your time more efficiently. And finally, like I said, this course is hard work, but don't forget to have fun along the way. I will do my best to have fun within reason, and hopefully you have enough wiggle room to relax and have some fun as well. Let me know if there's anything else I should have addressed in the video. This would be a good thing to post to Piazza, and I will see you all in class.